Welcome to Sikhcast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Introducing Paigham-i-Goya, Expression of Love, new translations of a selection of ghazals from Bhai Nand Lal Goya. Today's podcast begins with the recitation of Bhai Nand Lal's ghazal in Persian, followed by a new English transcreation, the result of a unique collaboration between Dr. Fatima Fayyaz and Dr. Nadhra Khan of Lahore University of Management Sciences, Damanpreet Singh, writer and graduate student, and Inni Kaur of SikhRI, followed by a discussion between Daman and Inni about the beauty of the ghazal and the transcreation process.
امشب به تماشای رخ یار توان رفت، سوی بت عاشق کش عیار توان رفت. در کوچه عشق ارچه محال است رسیدن، منصور صفت با قدم دار توان رفت. ای دل به سوی مدرسه گر میل نداری، باری به سوی خانه خمار توان رفت. چون خاطرم از عشق تو شد رشک گلستان، بیهوده چرا جانب گلزار توان رفت. ای دل چو شدی واقف اسرار الهی، در سینه ام ای مخزن اسرار توان رفت. صد روضه رضوان چو در خانه شکفته، گویا به چه سوی در و دیوار توان رفت.
Tonight, one may proceed to gaze upon the beloved's face, towards the one who is mysteriously merciless towards the lover. Although it is impossible to arrive at the lane of love, one may walk towards the gallows in the footsteps of Mansur. O heart, if you don't desire to go to a seminary, you may proceed towards a winehouse once. As your love has made my imagination the envy of a blooming garden, why may one proceed towards the garden then? O heart, since you are aware of divine secrets, I can proceed within myself, O treasure of secrets. 100 paradisiacal gardens have bloomed in the house, Goya. Why should one proceed elsewhere?
So, Guru Fateh, this is Inni Kaur in conversation with Damanpreet Singh on Ghazal number 12 from Bhai Nand Lal's collection, Divan-i-Goya. Welcome, Daman. I am so looking forward to speaking to you about this particular ghazal, which is one of my favorites so far. Before we go there, how are you? You know, it's a strange time. Just you okay?
Yeah, it is a strange time. I'm excited to be back in conversation with you. This ghazal is one of my favorites too, because it's kind of perfect for springtime, which is the season we're in. But it's also, I think, a difficult ghazal to talk about, as I think we'll explore together, because it's hard to perceive beauty in times when we see like so many preventable deaths happening around us and so much pain and loss. So I'm excited to think a little bit about like how we might think about these tensions through this ghazal.
Yeah, agreed with you. You know, while I was preparing for this podcast and I was reading the ghazal, and there is, you know, every ghazal has this repeated word, and in this ghazal it is tabana raft.
Mhm.
I'm butchering it. I'm butchering the translation. Sorry, I apologize. But you know, looking at the translation, like this word leads to movement. Like there's something happening in this entire ghazal,
Mhm.
and we are feeling that, and we are moving towards something. So I know we have talked a lot about it, the four of us, about how to translate these two words. But if you could explain to us what these two words really mean, and that will help us go through the ghazal, keeping those two words in mind,
Mhm.
and be able to maybe, the listeners will be able to feel that movement.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the repeated words in this ghazal are, as you say, Davan Raft, which means um, roughly means one. So Raft is the past participle of Raftan, which means to go in Persian. So the verb to go. And when you add Davan, which comes from Davistan, which means to be able to, this form may mean something along the lines of one may go or one may proceed, or it is possible to go or it is possible to proceed. And as we'll go through each couplet, we settled on something slightly different for each couplet, because in the English it's not quite possible to convey all of the meanings and all of the nuances, as you might get in Persian from Davan Raft. But exactly like you're saying, it's an idea, it's conveying the possibility of movement and the ability to go towards something. And I think often we'll use the word towards or proceed instead of go. But yeah, this one is, I think, interesting because it's a verb, and I think that's new in the context of the other ghazals we've done so far in terms of the repeated word.
Okay, so the first couplet is, tonight one may proceed to gaze upon the beloved's face, towards the one who is mysteriously merciless towards the lover. I know we had a lot of back and forth on the word, when we settled on the word gaze.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our listeners would love to know how we settled on that word. But there is also, the word proceed, which you have explained before. So tonight we can, it's possible to gaze upon the beloved's face.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found, let's talk about the first line and then I'll talk about the second line, because the second line has so much depth
Mm-hmm.
that I think if we put them together, we might lose our audience, and we may not capture the beauty of what is being said and the depth of these two lines.
Yeah. I think that the word gaze, so tamashaye rokeya tavan raft, is suggestive of, one might watch the beloved's face or look at the beloved's face. We settled on gaze upon, which arguably is different from watching or looking. It does suggest an intimacy, I think. And I think in the original Persian, there is an intimacy also, even as we kind of stray from the exact literal translation. But that was kind of the debate we had about gaze. And I think ultimately, in the English, this is the word that conveys the intimacy and the love that comes with, that doesn't come with watching or looking at someone's face or the beloved's face.
And that's always been the challenge. How do you convey that intimacy, which the original word, if we went literal from one to the other, did not convey? Watch is different than gaze. Gaze and gaze, I felt that there was a longing.
Mm-hmm.
You're just absorbing, you're admiring.
Mm-hmm.
You gaze upon something that you you want a connection with, or it's beautiful, or there is something there
Mm-hmm.
that is there. So in the second line, which we have translated of the first couplet, ayar, which is the metaphor for beloved. And I know in the ghazal number 1, for the same word, we used unfathomable. So we translated ayar in the first ghazal as unfathomable. And here we have chosen to write mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that was an intentional choice, but these are the attributes, the characteristics that are which every word has. It's also, and this is where when we say beloved, just beloved, it's only one sense of connotation. But then in Ayar, I was explained. I mean, there was this wonderful discussion about what were the characteristics and what were the things that this word is bringing out. So speak to us about that.
Yeah. So I think I would want to point out two things in this line. So the first is that, so in the first line we got Rukhe Yar, which is a word that I think, is in Punjabi, is often translated as friend, is also suggestive of a beloved, which is how we've translated it here. And in the second line of this couplet, we have the beloved referred to not as Yar, but as Ashik or lover, right? So that's an important difference from the beloved to the lover.
Mm-hmm.
So we've now shifted our attention from gazing at the lover, gazing at the beloved, and now we're thinking about what's happening to the lover himself. And arguably, this is Nand Lal talking about himself, or the speaker of the ghazal talking about himself. So I think that's something important to note. Is I think like that shift would be very clear in the Persian, and I think in the English, bringing that to the attention of the listeners and the readers. But yeah, IR from unfathomable to mysterious. Yeah, I'm trying to recall the debate we had like when we had that discussion, but it seems to me so the word IR also suggests not only mystery, but it also suggests kind of cunning. It can suggest kind of wandering, right? Like the wandering itinerant kind of mysterious person you might describe as IR. So I don't think mysteriously merciless captures all of those meanings, but there are various layers to how that word is understood. And I think the shift from unfathomable to mysterious is important because whereas unfathomable suggests something that you can't grasp or know, mysterious is more playful. Again, it's more intimate. It's more how you would describe a beloved rather than something that you just have no grasp of or no understanding of, right? You can figure out a mystery in theory. If something is unfathomable, you just can't figure it out. So I think, again, we are trying to convey the intimacy and the playfulness that would come through very readily in the Persian through these choices.
But there is this word, merciless towards the lover. So this beloved has the power, that playfulness to really, when we say, when you look at the beloved has the power to actually kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It's that bit, that merciless. And use yet, the one who can take your life,
Mm-hmm.
the one who you would die for.
Mm-hmm.
That's that much. You still are attracted because there's something a lot more powerful that goes there.
Yeah, and it also seems to me again to be this idea of longing, and there's a loss that you're trying to recover with your beloved that is also a merciless thing.
Right. When I was reading this particular line and this particular word, it reminded me of how in Gurbani, in the Sikh scripture, in the script, how the Guru, where the word for the divine comes up, it's Hari, Ram, Bhagwan, and if we just translate those words as divine, or quote unquote, however you want to call it, if you choose to say God, which I, it just takes away that quality, that intimacy. Like Ram is the beautiful, the charming. So that comes through. Now, Hari is that remover of suffering. So Bhagwan is the adorable one. So this is the, so when I was with that word there, I'm looking at it that this is a beloved who does not care about the lover. This is a carefree beloved.
Mm-hmm.
And you're ready to give everything up for this carefree beloved. And it's not in the literal sense that that this beloved is killing the lover, but it's a metaphor
Mm-hmm.
that the beloved actually does not need to pay heed to the lover. It is the lover that is it's not, I mean, I don't even know it, it's that tension of that relationship between the lover and the beloved. And what does the lover feel that the beloved is doing? And there, at times there's an intimacy, and then at times there's a distance. And when there's that distance, the lover, the seeker says, "Where are you?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I feel you?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you silent? Why are you distant?"
So there seems to be two levels, right? There's the beloved that's always carefree, that one feels various sorts of longing for, at times feels very close to, or might feel very connected to, but then at other times you might feel very disconnected from the beloved. You might not feel like you understand, or you might feel like it's unfathomable, right? That you would be able to, connect with whatever this beloved is. But then there's also like the level of like the world, right? So like it's a very, so like one interpretation, and I think this might be like an in my understanding, this would be contrary to a Sikh interpretation, is that when looking for one's connection to one's beloved, you look inside, you go inward, you retreat inward, right? And it's all about your own practice getting towards, the classic example of the yogis going into the mountains, and which Buran Singh will call not Simran, right? Which he'll say is a dead form of connection, and is that not actually the Sikh form of Simran. So, this is maybe a digression, but in a context where we are living among unprecedented death, where it might feel like, and I personally have felt over the past 2 weeks, very disconnected from a divine or the beloved or Ikwankar. It's very difficult for me to understand this present moment while also knowing that there's something, there's something called hukam, and how do we understand it. So I'd be curious, especially in a context of a ghazal like this, where Bhai Nand Lal is presenting us with a very intimate account, and I kind of get worried about like making this kind of intimate account like entirely personal in a way that I think is like dangerous. um so I think I'm curious about that, and how do we what does how do we read something like this today, um, and try to think about those different levels. Because I think also I'm thinking about like, and we've talked about this in past podcasts, is where the argument that Lou Fenwick makes, for example, one of the scholars who studied Bhai Nand Lal in English, um, which is why I know his work the most of the scholars on Bhai Nand Lal, is that he was appropriating the Sufi form of the ghazal and Sufi form of talking about the divine, and making an argument through that form for another form of connection, another form of Simran. So I think it might be good to like try to think that through, especially during this month's podcast.
You said something interesting, that you feel distant
Mm-hmm.
from the divine, from Ikunkar, from whatever the beloved is. And I can tell you also, I've been through my share of 3.5 weeks of being in a no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, then in that entire time, there was never once a moment there was a tension, or it was, I am in this, in the present. I was very much in the present and saying, whatever is happening, whatever I'm experiencing, it is in hukam. And so I think that's where the it's sort of, and it's going to come out arrogant, but it isn't. It's coming out of a place of sharing. It's coming out of a place of when you have experienced something. So it's also being very vulnerable for me right now. It is actually, I was speaking to a dear friend of mine, and I told her it was like, how do you know it is the truth? For me, I stood witness to the truth, and therefore it is the truth for me. So in those 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, what I was witnessing, what I was experiencing was really my reinforcement of the truth which I knew was out there, which I had heard about, which has been written, and which is articulated, but I experienced it. So for me, that beloved was very close in that point in time. At other points in time, I have said, where is this connection? Why am I not feeling this? And it is, part of it is yourself, and part of it is a force also, which is enables you to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers the question, honestly, because I don't know if there is an answer. It's a collection of experiences, and this is also Bhai Nand Lal's collection of what he's experiencing with the Guru, because his beloved is the Guru.
Right. No, certainly. Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say more is that what we're witnessing right now in terms of the multiple genocides that are happening as we record this podcast is certainly not Hukam. It's certainly a straying away from Hukam.
True.
And that is what I think I'm trying to say.
I think it is how we handle it, through rage, through service, through love, through compassion, or through saying it doesn't really matter. I'm not concerned with it.
Right.
And that's the humanity element of it. Things are going to be happening continuously around us. The world will continue, the wind, the sun is up, the moon. People do things. It's our reaction. How do we do it? How do we rise to these occasions and serve? Or we can, be like the black marketers and make a profit out of it.
Right.
Right? And those are the choices, and those are the things that determine our action and our place within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind, I mean, whatever society, doesn't really matter. It's within ourselves. How do we define ourselves and our place within ourselves? How do we look ourselves in the mirror and say, yes, it's okay, or it's not okay? And, the more sensitive you are, the more in tune you are with humanity and feeling the pain of every individual and every being, and even planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That is what an awareness is. That is what is living in Hukam,
Mm-hmm.
is that acceptance, and there is your place and you work from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know we've digressed a lot from this.
So much.
Oh my goodness. So let's try and come back to the ghazal.
Let's come back.
Yeah, okay. Let me read the first couplet again before we go to the second, because I think we may have lost that beautiful thread which Bhai Nand Lal has put together for us. So the first couplet says, "Tonight one may proceed to gaze upon the beloved's face, towards the one who is mysteriously merciless towards the lover. Although it is impossible to arrive at the lane of love, one may walk towards the gallows in the footsteps of Mansoor." I know we spoke about Mansoor in our previous ghazal, and I think it was in ghazal number 8. And that for his belief, when he said "Ana Haq," that I am the truth, he was beheaded, and yet they asked him to change what he said, and he said no. So he gave up his life for what he truly believed, that I am the truth, because he experienced something. And in this moment, particularly around this time, and having been so unwell as well, this was that moment of reflection and pause for me. Yes, when I say I have witnessed the truth, will I have the strength to do what Mansoor did? If I am challenged, and so this is that reflection. So on this ghazal, but the purist in me, honestly, would have preferred Daman to have translated it as one may proceed towards the gallows in the footsteps of Mansoor, instead of one may walk. I feel proceed is a little bit more forceful, but we chose on walk. But although it's impossible to arrive at the lane of love, I don't know if it is impossible, but he is saying so. One may walk towards the gallows in the footsteps of, maybe I won't get to my beloved, but will I be able to do what Mansoor did for what I believe in? And that's what I feel, because in the first one, he talked about the beloved being that merciless, that, takes your life. Am I willing to give up my life? Something so precious that we value. So, that was a couple of things. But the word also, kuche, my grandmother would use the word, asi us kuche vich rende si, and I never truly understood kuche and what it really meant. And I don't know whether we do justice to the word lane. What are your thoughts on this couplet, Daman?
Yeah, I think your explanation is really helpful. I think it is interesting that we chose, I think, again, in terms of wanting to convey movement and the kind of process of going towards something that comes through in this ghazal, we chose walk to emphasize that imagery. And I think also to contrast it with the impossibility of arrival that comes in the first line of this couplet, because right throughout the ghazal we'll see him thinking about going towards something, and there isn't quite an arrival. Lane of Love, Kuche Ishq is interesting because I guess Lane of Love, Kuche Ishq is interesting because it does, I think, convey a sense. I'd be curious, in your understanding, how you understand that word, if you were to try to describe a kuche. But it does seem like it's very much not like a thoroughfare or a main road or a very well paved road, even, right? It's an alley. I imagine a winding alley, like in Amritsar or something, right? Like something very narrow, winding, unpaved, and kind of confusing, right? And that's what and I don't think Lane gets there. As you're saying, Ali was another word we played with. I don't know if Ali gets there either. But I think it is, for me at least, it conveys a very particular image.
I think because my grandmother would use it so much. Asi us kuche vich rende si. So for me, kuche was something small, something circular, something that was protected, but it was. I always felt it being circular. And there were a couple of other people, other families maybe, but it was smaller.
Yeah.
It was not just one family. It was a couple, 3 or 4, but it was secluded. You had to go there. It was an effort to get to that kuche, because then you went to the next kuche. So it was like it was contained.
Yeah.
It was arriving at that place, and Lane does not convey that.
Right. Yeah, I think it doesn't, right? Because even I'm thinking like, you have to, apologies for giving so many city examples, but you're not in the center of the city, right? You're straying away from whatever the downtown or whatever. I'm really just, to be fully honest with our listeners, I'm really just imagining Amritsar right now. But you're not you're not walking toward Darbar Sahib or whatever, right? You're like in one of the back lanes, and it's kind of feels like an enclave, right? What you're suggesting, it's not. Yeah, I think if we were to go back to it and have more of this discussion, I think I'm realizing that Lane is maybe not conveying any of this, but it is conveying that it's like not a main road, so maybe somewhat successful.
Why didn't we come up with enclave? Because is a little bit closer to Kuche, I feel, at this point in time.
Mhm.
And this is how it is. It is, the more you delve into the word and the more you engage with the ghazal, how your understanding changes.
Mhm.
And you look back, I mean, we've worked on this. It's not even been, a few months. And yet
Mhm.
we're saying maybe this word we could change.
Mhm.
And I think that's the beauty of the ghazals.
Mhm.
So the third couplet says, which is very interesting, "O heart, if you don't desire to go to a seminary, you may proceed towards a wine house once." Daman, unpack this for us, please. I mean, you've got the seminary, you've got the wine house,
Yeah.
you've got the heart. I mean, you've got everything happening here.
Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing here maybe is the contrast between the madrasa and the khane khamar, or the tavern bar, what we've called the wine house. Madrasa is also in Persian and also in Arabic speaking places the word for school. We've gone with seminary in particular here because um, our interpretation of this ghazal is he's thinking about, how does one understand this mysteriously merciless beloved? Or how does one try to walk towards the gallows in the footsteps of Mansoor? And he's kind of, the way I'm interpreting it is that he's kind of having a struggle with himself. And he's saying, there are like institutions to which one goes to try to obtain this education. And it really does become an education, and it becomes about, learning things as one would in a school. And I think he's trying to say, so we've interpreted it as him talking to his heart and speaking directly to his heart, which was a debate we had. He might, in the way we've done it, it's him addressing his heart and saying, okay, if you don't want to go to the seminary for the formal education that one receives to learn the divine secrets or to become pious, then go to the wine house, right? There's other venues, there's other ways in which one can follow the footsteps of Mansoor, or, walk on this path of reverence bondage, right? However we want to interpret it and however we want to describe it here. So of course the wine house is suggestive of intoxication. It's suggestive of something entirely different from something entirely different from what one does at a school, right? It's again, it's somewhat of a playful imagery. It's also, a place where one goes to, do things that are not entirely sanctioned by mainstream society, etc. Right? It's a different type of space. Also, the wine house, of course, is an image that comes up in Sufi poetry all the time in terms of the intoxication of one's relationship with the beloved. So again, we see him using that imagery and playing with that Sufi imagery. And in this case, he's talking directly to himself or his heart.
Mm. When I listened to it in the Persian, I felt that the language was flowing, and there was such sweetness to it. And here, when we've translated it as, O heart, if you don't desire to go to a seminary, you may proceed towards the wine house once. I felt there was such restriction. It is like we've put this flying bird in a box, not even in a cage, because at least in the cage there is some air and there's some light, but this is like we've boxed it. And I don't know why, I mean, the sweetness in the Persian is not coming through as much as I would have liked it. And again, the word proceed comes again here. Proceed towards the wine house. Go at least once. Try something different. Be intoxicated, and that intoxication itself is quite threatening for many. First of all, the wine house and that what it represents, and to be intoxicated. But that's this whole relationship between the lover and the beloved, because if there is no intoxication, there is that love is just isn't there. That intensity isn't there. So we're coming to the fourth couplet. As your love has made my imagination the envy of a blooming garden, why may one proceed towards the garden then? Daman, I think I just melted at this one. Isn't this beautiful? The affirmation that love makes one's consciousness so beautiful that even the gardens that are in full bloom are envious of one's consciousness that is awakened. This is that power of love that honestly can make even an unworthy person feel beautiful. I mean, this couplet was, this entire ghazal, but this couplet was really so close to my heart. So what are, just the word, I know we've translated imagination. And here, when I went to explain it, I used word consciousness. So there was in what we agreed on, and yet when I look at it, it's different. So what are your thoughts on this exquisite couplet?
Yeah, this really is one of my favorite couplets, I think. And I agree with you rethinking it now that there does seem to be many different ways in which we could have gone with this one as I'm like relooking, in real time at the Persian, because I think there is a sense here of this I think in the broadest context of this ghazal, he's turning inward, right? He's addressed his heart, and now he's like fully turning inward. But I'm trying, yeah, imagination versus consciousness, I think, is really interesting, because in the Persian, they're actually, if I were to like try to do a very rough word by word translation, and no one should, quote me on this, but it's okay. I'm back. Jun khatiram. So khatiram is like because for the sake of, right? We have this word in like Punjabi also, right? Khatir. So I think he's saying something like because of, or like as a result of, or because of your love, I've become the envy of the fully blooming garden. And I think that maybe we could even take out imagination or consciousness, because I actually think that chun khatiram az ishq to should, which is the verb here, which means become, to become, and khatiram, the m at the end of khatir, the meme in Persian, is suggestive of I. So I wonder if he's actually like going a step further, and he's saying that I myself have become the envy of the blooming garden.
Isn't this connecting to Mansoor? When Mansoor is saying Ana Haq, yeah? And yes, it's so much in that, because it's not, it is when love enters you, you become beautiful. You feel that and you say, I am beautiful. And it's not coming from a place of arrogance. It's actually coming from that recognition that something has entered you, that has lifted you to feel this. And now that is what it is that you are feeling. Oh, I love that. To take out the word imagination, because what you just said was a lot more powerful. And I feel a lot closer to the ghazal, but then that's just me.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of those things where, I would be curious to, for example, talk to Fatima and Nadhra about this, who, of course, Fatima has a great knowledge of Persian. So, and this is something that I think maybe we should highlight for our listeners, is that I think often in the discussions that we had among the four of us, like me and you would come from, I have Persian knowledge, but it's certainly not as much as Fatima does, for example. And we would come, I think, from knowing the Gurbani a little bit more, and Fatima and Nadhra come from knowing the Sufi literature more, right? And I think that becomes a really interesting conversation because, of course, he himself is between these two worlds, and not even between. He's knowledgeable about both of these worlds, right? But yeah, I'd be curious to rethink why we settled on imagination, consciousness, or whether he's going a step further. I think are all three different and very powerful interpretations of this line. But again, right, there's a sense of the turn inward. It's no longer that there's no longer a sense of movement, but now he's questioning what that movement even looks like.
Right. Because I've become beautiful. That's what he's saying. I've become the envy of the blooming garden, so the blossoming garden. So, why should I go anywhere? Why proceed? Why may anyone proceed? Right. So let's come to the next one and see what he's saying next. So this is a couple of number 5. He's addressing his heart. O heart, since you are aware of divine secrets, I can proceed within myself, O treasure of secrets. Now, I know I think the four of us, if we spent 45 minutes plus on this couplet, that's an understatement. So I wanted the listeners to know that this much has gone into just what goes into these type of translations or transcreations. While this conversation, so I'm just going to just open it up in the sense, I'm just going to put it in what I think this is saying. I feel that this is a conversation between the poet and his heart. And he's addressing his heart. Oh, my heart, since you have become a friend of Khuda, of the divine, of the whatever it is, you also have become a treasure of the secrets. Because you're a friend, you know those secrets. So then my journey needs to be within myself. I don't need to go outside anywhere else. But then how do you say this in a poetic form, Daman?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting, right. So there's I think multiple so at the level of like the grammatical, there also are multiple interpretations we could have gone with, right? I think in the first line, it is quite straightforwardly that he's referring to his heart. Again, again, we have the same verb, which means to become. So perhaps we could say, O heart, since you have become aware of divine secrets, instead of you are. We chose are both for brevity, but also because there isn't a sense that like you go, for example, go to the school or the seminary to become educated in divine secrets. He's actually suggesting that this is something that is always the state of one's heart. It's a matter of, figuring that out and learning that rather than like learning in a school or whatever. So that's why we went with are instead of become to kind of try to convey this. And in the second line, I still don't know what my interpretation would be. Is it's unclear to me whether he's referring to him. So it's I think it's an open question whether he's suggesting that one becomes, as you were saying, I think that one becomes the treasure as one comes into this love and as one becomes the envy of the blooming garden. You yourself become the treasure. Is he referring to his heart as the treasure of secrets that one needs to unlock or something like this? I think would be a question that I am curious about.
So the seeker walks to the treasure never walks to the seeker.
Mm-hmm.
So he needs to walk towards the heart. He needs to unlock that heart and go within.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he will discover everything. So it is. So for me, that part was clear,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the journey. Because he's talking about the in the previous one, he's saying that your love has made me so beautiful that I don't need to go anywhere else. I don't need to go to any garden. And then he's recognizing that the heart, which was, I think, out of the body, which he placed outside, but that the heart isn't within your frame,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there is that ownership, that heart is within me, and you that is within me already know these secrets. So I need to really get to know you.
Mm-hmm.
And feel that's the way I have,
Yeah.
I understand it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, so, I mean, and that's where it is, one's own understanding, one's own experiences determine so much, because we are a product at the end of the day of who we are, just and the experiences that we carry,
Mm-hmm.
and what we have, what we absorb. But in the last couplet, Daman, I think it's the culmination. 100 paradisical gardens have bloomed in the house. Goya, why should one proceed anywhere else? So for me, this is what he has now entered his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And in his heart, he is seeing all these gardens in bloom, which were outside. And he says, there's nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the way this journey has taken us on.
Mm-hmm.
From the lover to the beloved, the walking, am I ready to pay the price for the truth?
Mm-hmm.
And then where do I find this truth? How do I become this truth? How do I become beautiful? And know these secrets. I don't need to go anywhere else. I need to go within.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he goes within, he finds that everything is within and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And he's content. He's arrived. This whole thing has been about movement. Proceed, proceed, proceed. And then why should anyone proceed? It's like, I've arrived.
Are you interpreting, and I guess when I say are you, I really mean are we, interpreting Darkhane again as the heart, this treasure, this knower of divine secrets, etc.? This the heart that he's addressed directly. So is this what he means by Darkhane?
I am saying yes, that's what it is. For me, that I have, it's like I have come to term peace, or I've accepted, now peace is not the right word, I've accepted that the heart and the body, everything is all one.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore when that acceptance, and I have seen, I have witnessed, that these 100 heavenly gardens
Mm-hmm.
are within this house. So you could term this house as a frame,
Mm-hmm.
this body, the frame, the heart. Now, like everything is one.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, there is that unity, there is that union, there is that there's no longer that separation
Mm-hmm.
of the heart being something else and I'm for addressing the heart. It's like everything is one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think the one thing I would want to point out also that I think is very interesting in this couplet that we kind of simplified in the English is when the second line, why should one proceed elsewhere? It's Goya beche suye daro divar, which means why should one proceed toward another? Daro divar means building, but literally means door and wall, right? So he is evoking this very physical imagery of a building. Why should one proceed towards another, frame, another door and wall, another house, which we're really struggling with how to convey that in a poetic manner, because Daro Divar is a very, flows very well in the Persian, and we would have both of those words also in Punjabi. But it was very difficult to convey that poetically in English, which is why we settled on elsewhere. But the elsewhere is very importantly, I think, he's describing as a physical place.
So it's interesting, while you were sharing this with me right now, the image of why should I go to another door is it's actually because everything is within my house. I bow within the house, but it's also the house could be the Guru's house, right? So why do I need to go to another door? Why should I matha take to another door? And it's very much that when you accept the Guru, when you accept your Sufi master, that's what it is. You don't then leave. You don't go to another door. So that came up immediately when you said that. That, that reference to that door was so important.
Yeah.
And I think we missed that here.
Yeah.
I think we needed to have said that door, because the door has such a imagery. For a seeker, door has multiple, because in Barney also, it's like I'm sitting outside the door when you call me in. The seeker's always outside waiting for that call. And here he is saying that he's received the call and it's blooming and everything. So I'm not going anywhere. This door, this is the place. Wow, Daman. That was beautiful. I'm glad you mentioned the door. I had missed that.
And I think, again, this is something, a question that I'd be interested in in discussing again with the broader team. And I think this is another one of those moments where thinking about the true context in which he's thinking and writing is really important. Because if I'm remembering correctly, Daro Divar is a phrase, is an idiomatic phrase that suggests a place. Quite broadly from what Fatima was explaining to us. But it is always the struggle with translating idioms is that do you translate the meaning of the idiom or do you translate the idiom literally? Because when you try to translate an idiom literally, it often doesn't make sense in the other language. So, when I say door and wall in English, that doesn't mean anything to an English, that doesn't convey something immediately. So I think that's another one of these challenges that we come up with, is where he's using imagery that for someone who knows the language, for someone who knows the form of the ghazal, would already very easily and quickly convey something that in English we really struggle to convey.
But the perfect example is actually Mansoor, because the minute the word comes up, you know exactly what he's saying.
Right.
But if a person doesn't know the story of Mansoor or what happened, they would be lost.
Yeah. And, we've seen it with Sufi, Zahid, and Qalandar also, which we ultimately didn't even try to translate. So I think that's something that is really, I think, crucial to keep in mind, is that as we've said in every podcast so far, is that this is very much these translations are very much a product of a particular conversation, and even the four of us getting together and trying to do these translations again, we'd end up with something very different.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's been lovely. I would love to thank you. First of all, I have to say thank you to the listeners who've been sending us, lovely comments and questions. Can you do a little bit more on something? I think for the next one, we'll put that into the ghazal and see if we can answer some of your questions in the next one. So look out for that. But thank you so much for supporting, for your love. And, we do enjoy getting your comments. I know Daman and I love reading them and say, okay, how did we miss that? Or maybe next time we need to be a little clear. But thank you for your love and your support. And we hope to come back to you again very soon. Daman, your last thoughts, what would you like to share?
Yeah, no, I also very much appreciate being able to do this, and I'm so glad that we have listeners who are interested in what we have to say, which often doesn't seem very interesting to me. So that's always nice to have that affirmation that, maybe something of what we have been thinking about resonates. But yeah, hopefully next time we do this virtual gathering, things are less bleak in the world.
It will be what it will be. May we have the strength to absorb, to deal with what comes gracefully, in grace. And that's been I think if there's anything else, it is, may we be in grace and deal with it in the ways which are most honorable and respectful to all. So thank you, Daman. Thank you to our listeners. Until next time, Guru Fateh.
You were listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.